Dr. Alex,
Yes.
we at AnyVisa have an extensive experience with study permits and student visas. Due to recent updates on study visa requirements, we receive big number of questions. Let me start with most common. Do I need a visa, student visa, if I'm from the visa-free country?
Very general question, Maria. Thank you very much for asking this, because people from Australia, France, generally Europe, many other countries can visit Canada without visa with what we call ETA, Electronic Travel Authorization, and which, by the way, was introduced rather recently on a scale of time. It's like 10 years. But what we're talking about is requirement for visa, which is not just visitation rights. Visa granted for students based on application, and that's why we call it visa for everyone. It is required because students must obtain authorization to study in Canada while they overseas. Yes, it is required still. Yeah.
Okay, so the government of Canada recently announced the increase of funds requirements
Right.
for students to apply, and many are upset about it. Can you please comment it?
Well, first of all, it's it's a double-sided sword, right? So why? Because on one hand, students attracted to Canada because Canada allows students to work outside of campus for a certain time and make some money on the side. At the same time, situation became rather critical because many, I would say, especially low-paid jobs, they abuse the situation. Like people working in a fast food restaurant somewhere else, usually paid a little and exploited a lot. And in this case, what we observe, if people feel more independent, like they have savings or parents support them, they definitely not subject to exploitation and definitely not subject to that kind of abuse. So the motivation, the good motivation from the government side is there. We can confirm that by practice. But at the same time, raising the bar of living expenses is contradictory to what government is fighting, because government announced that students are the problem for high real estate costs and rentals. Well, there is this balance there, right? So, and we definitely see this as a positive sign to have people who have more savings, so they don't have to do low pay job out of desperation. But at the same time, we would love to see government finding more, I would say, compelling reasons and language to explain it, because they made a lot of people upset. But I guess this government is what it is. They don't know how to do politics. So,
When students counting on post-graduation work permit as a default option,
yeah.
is it a correct expectation?
Oh, it's a wrong expectation. Thank you for asking that question, Maria. Why it's wrong? Because people attracted by sales agencies and this kind of middlemen all over the world, we observe it, they promise postgraduate work permit automatically by default, which is not true. And people have to be extremely careful. And especially in the light of recent changes of this year, government announced that new regulatory requirements will be imposed on postgraduate work permits. So select the institution according to your plans, because many people go for co-op program which does not provide postgraduate work permit. In this case, they on their own. You have to understand that. And many people from what we call easy to get in countries like Japan, they come in here, and if they want to stay, they then realize that they need postgraduate work permit and they don't have it. So no, it's not by default. You have to be extremely careful on selecting the program.
If I'm an adult with extensive work experience, family, and significant savings,
Okay.
is my study visa is a guaranteed way to permanent residency?
No, Maria. Very good question. We hear this a lot from mature people who actually achieve something in their life, let's say build a career, um, I guess have some savings and ready to undertake some study. Don't forget, this is direct implication of dual intent, because your career will become the obstacle on your way here, because the government of Canada will say, well, you a chief engineer, why you want to study art? And you have to prove that your change in interest in life is solid and not just groundless. So you have to be absolutely careful. And sometimes, especially if we have people like you described, Maria, we can definitely find some alternatives to expensive and sometimes useless study, especially considering that people can be rejected right from the beginning at application level. And this is something they have to think twice about, because A, not every program is working for them. Again, their life goals must be absolutely clearly presented and understood, and then we can find solution.
Coming back to dual intent clause,
Yeah.
why people always ignore it?
Well, because that's human nature to see what they wish to see, right? So basically, how it works, people ignore red flags and obvious signs and sometimes advisory. They listen to someone who probably did something before. And dual intent is something that government is looking for first and foremost. Why? Well, because dual intent is a prevention mechanism. They want to see if the person will stay in Canada. And somebody can argue, well, of course I will stay in Canada. That's why I'm applying to study. But that's exactly that works against them. So yes, dual intention is there pretty much for every student with minor exemptions. But at the same time, why people ignore it? Well, I guess for two reasons. Um, I guess illiteracy, because they don't know the law and they don't know how it works. And sometimes they try to save money on advisors who can advise them professionally under license and with all responsibility for what they say. And that's why when people come into us, what we call broken, they all already come in after someone broke them and their life and their immigration history. So the best advice to avoid dual intent mistakes is to work with people who know what to do.
The Canadian government put a cap on study visas.
Mhm.
Is there a better alternative for study visa for both young and adult students?
Yeah, we concern very much concern, Marie, about that. And for those who listening and watching, I can tell you this: the cap is a measure that I think is counterproductive. It's my personal opinion, and probably our professional opinion here. But the cap is allowing government um, to control the situation a little better, to make life easier for officers overseas, because the demand for Canadian education was used to be very high, and definitely people considered Canada as a way, opposed to Australia, for example, or Britain, as the way to stay here for permanent residency. Now government is claiming that it's their fault and it's unfair, in my view. But despite all that, and considering the fact that the government put a cap, we see side effect of this as well. Many institutions will not survive. And if you watch another video we just recently recorded, many institutions will fall and die this year. And that's something that we have to also acknowledge as negative impact of Canadian government decision. But is there a better alternative, Maria? Yes, it is. We're definitely talking to people with uh, bright education already there, with experience sometimes, or maybe young professionals, or maybe even young students. And they have ideas and they have plans and they have sometimes um, very short time on their hands, because they want to do something right away and definitely become Canadians with a faster path than going to study for years and hope for the work to be completed and then hope that it will be selected on the what we call common path of express entry of some sort. So The startup visa alternative is something that you need to consider very seriously, and that's what we're talking about with many students, adults, and young students and young professionals, because sometimes it's unachievable for them to be here and study for years and years and just live with the hope, because life is going by and they want a stable life, stable family, stable relationship, and it's impossible on a temporary basis. So that's why startup visa probably the great alternative.
Thank you for your answers, Dr. Alex.
Thank you very much, Maria. Good questions.